into outer space. These walls right here are holding me back again. These are going on, going on, going on like a melody.
My name is Nyokeë and I'm an audiovisual artist. I'm a researcher, musician. I also am a university lecturer as well. And I'm really inspired by video games and kind of anime and Japanese culture. And I like to combine these things together in like a sort of audiovisual approach. So I produce music here in the studio, I record myself, I record my vocals, I produce myself, and then later on I go ahead and I sort of add some 3D graphics as a visualizer. And I'm also really interested in performance, live performance as well. So on stage, I work with a lot of visuals, I work with a lot of technology, and yeah. I think art in general is a really interesting way to break free from cultural traditions and from kind of entrenched, almost kind of stereotypes. I think that one thing that's really important for me is kind of challenging how you associate types of sound with kind of cultural meanings, and kind of play with that tension a little bit to kind of put it in a sort of more in a context. I guess my first instrument was violin. I grew up in a very kind of classical music environment, and it was very kind of strict, and I learned a lot. It was very useful. But at the same time, I discovered electronic music, and electronic music kind of spoke to me on an intuitive level. But back in the day, there was also a lot of judgment against, things like techno, where it's like, oh, proper people don't listen to this. This isn't real music. And like, I play the violin. And like, it got me thinking about how the raw timbre of how something sounds really shouldn't sort of have anything to do with these cultural conventions. So it's like that interplay between what things mean to people and what they mean to me in a way. I'm very inspired by lots of different things. I like being out in the nature. I love seeing kind of art, going to museums, going to other concerts. But I think, to be honest, the creative spark comes when you least expect it. It can be a very random process. One thing that inspires me is kind of the way my brain works. I have synesthesia, and so when I see anything or I perceive anything around me, it kind of gets remixed in my head, and it's kind of like the real world experiences that come in. My brain turns into another thing. And I guess that's why I'm inspired by video games as well. It's because they create these kind of alternate realities, and I feel like that's a bit like what my brain does as well. So when this happens and how it happens can be hard to control, but that's where technology comes in, because it's a really great device to capture inspiration on the go. When creative ideas come to me, it's something that's really impossible to predict, but I think the funny thing is it happens the least when you're in a controlled environment where you're trying to capture this stuff. So I've tried working in traditional recording studios, like massive windowless kind of spaceships where you're there, but it's almost like I get a mental block when I'm in those kinds of spaces. Like if I know what I need to do and I'm prepared, then yeah, it can be great to sort of check a mix or something like that. But for like ideation, for getting ideas, I think actually, funnily enough, the proper spaces are the worst places for me to kind of do that. So inspiration will hit me often when I'm outside, maybe if I'm going for a run or I'm kind of outside on public transport. Sometimes I've had it before where I've written a song and I've actually dreamt the song and I had to capture it really fast when I woke up. So it's really always in situations where I'm actually not in a studio, to be honest. So I'm working on a song and it's called Fireflies, and actually it came to me sort of a month ago. I get on and off insomnia, so sometimes I can't sleep, and I guess what happened to me last month was I was very overworked. I was kind of a bit overwhelmed, kind of burnt out. But there was this little spark in me that was kind of rebelling, which was saying, okay, like don't give up on me. I'm still here. I need to, I need to have that. I need to have those moments of creativity happening. So what actually happened to me is that my body almost started waking up in the middle of the night, because it was that part of me thinking now is the safe time to be creative, which is obviously really bad because I felt super tired. But it kind of got me thinking about how it's difficult to have these moments of true creativity and true creative flow. It's really difficult to get to those times, and they're rare. And in this song, basically, I'm expressing that as a metaphor. So I'm imagining this kind of mythical creature, which could be like a glowing deer. I don't know, that's just what it looks like in my head. But I was imagining every morning in this kind of twilight zone when the world hasn't quite woken up yet, where I can be truly myself. I imagine this creature comes to me and we spent a few moments together before the sun comes up and kind of ruins everything. And like I have to pretend to be a normal human again. But that's kind of what the song is about. And I guess it combines this sort of like magical sparkliness with a really fat beat. So my music contains multiple different elements. I use kind of synthesizers, I use electronic instruments from the computer, I use kind of hardware synths, I've got my violin, I sing, sometimes I even record Game Boys and retro games consoles. But I think I start really writing with my voice because I can hear in my head what kind of thing I want to create, and so I often sing it into my phone. Like I'll even sing like a drum groove and it sounds completely ridiculous, but it's only for me to hear, so it's fine. Sometimes I do write using my violin because I always end up coming up with different ideas. So it's really interesting that when I sing a melody, the melody turns out different to if I write with the violin. But I think the main thing I use really is kind of my voice. It's really interesting actually, because quite often if I remember a musical idea in my head and I kind of go back to what was in my head, it's almost I can't feel how it felt at the time. So I think it's like beyond kind of the raw melody, there's like tiny micro nuances that make like a world of difference between just a few notes and like what that melody meant to me. And I think what's really important as well is I think about that melody in context. So I guess that's where Songzap comes in as a really useful tool, is because when I just record myself with my phone camera, I don't get to kind of create layers or record different things on top of each other. So what I've done for a long time is I will record a video and then I'll record another video where I'll say, oh, this next thing will be played by this instrument on top of this part, to kind of remind myself how it fits together. But actually kind of multi-tracking stuff and thinking about what groove does this melody sit with is part of what's really important for me to remember it, because the melody on its own is kind of almost meaningless without that sort of imagined context. I think in electronic music it's often the case that people kind of think about the mix while they're writing. So like timbre, sound quality, the mix, the arrangement sort of are more closely tied together. It's not as much kind of a two-stage process of I'm writing a melody and some chords and now I'm going to produce this a little bit. So I definitely think about it in that way, and I kind of actually visualize my music in a way. I kind of imagine it as different sort of coloured blobs in space, I guess, or as kind of like a movement. So the way that it's being mixed, or the specific synths that I use, are very much tied to where they sit in space and what kind of role that they play in the arrangement. At the beginning of writing my book, I thought, it's great, I'm going to teach myself all these things and I'm going to do them and then make tutorials about them. But I realised pretty quickly that actually I might as well kind of work with people that are already great at these things and are better at it than I can, you know, realistically be in that short time frame. I love collaborating with people because it's such a nice way to sort of discover other sounds. I've been a solo artist for a very long time and I feel like sometimes that feels quite isolating. So I really enjoy sort of exploring other people's creativity. Sometimes I meet people on the internet. I've collaborated because I sort of exist in this niche scene of kind of video games inspired music. Often the people I collaborate with are somewhere halfway across the world.